Well, hello again. Welcome to another session of the 17th annual Transforming the Teaching and Learning Environment virtual conference. I'm Bob Hales. I'm your moderator. We have with us Dr. Anthony Pina. Did I pronounce that as correctly as I could?
You sure did.
Okay. He's a
Pleasure to have him
nationally
on.
recognized leader and expert in online and distance education and educational technology. He's been a consultant to Fortune 500 companies, small businesses, local government agencies, nonprofits, U.S. Department of Defense, and many other educational institutions. And he's overseen the development of multiple online degrees. And he's going to talk to us about establishing and managing institution-wide online course development. And I'm looking forward to it. It's something I've had to deal with over the years, and you can present some challenge. So take it away, all yours.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Bob, and I really appreciate that wonderful obituary that you gave to me. And
Testing, testing.
thank you so much. Yes, I can hear you, Cheryl. So so thank you so much for coming to this presentation. We're going to be talking about ways to how to make decisions for institution-wide online course development. So this is distinguished from having faculty build their own courses their own way, and how and why to do this at a more centralized and institutional level. So in order to kind of let you know, who is this guy and why is he worth my 50 minutes here? I am the Chief Online Learning Officer at Illinois State University in Normal, Illinois, Illinois' oldest public university. We are right smack dab in the middle of the state. If you draw a line between Chicago and St. Louis, right in the middle is where we are. We are a pretty decent sized institution, just over 20,000 students. And, and we are implementing the things that I'm talking about here that I have implemented at other institutions. I've been in this field of of educational technology for over 35 years and getting close to that as far as online learning. I'm the author and editor of these books on online learning, and I've had the privilege to serve as an online learning consultant to several colleges and universities across the country. So enough about me. Let's get right down to the meat of this. Typically, prior to COVID, there were a lot of people who thought, well, online learning and online degrees, online programs were something that the administration kind of foisted onto faculty. And in some cases, that may have been true, but not in the majority of cases. In the majority of cases, the way online learning started at most colleges and universities is that individual faculty, some would say rogue faculty, I would say innovative faculty, would put their courses online, starting off, you know, either with a learning management system or just developing web pages or whatever. And as faculty started teaching these courses, other colleagues would say, "Hey, what are you doing?" You know, "Oh, I'm doing this online course. Oh, let me see this." And then they would say, "Well, gee, I could do that too." And so then the number of courses started increasing, and then they start to be grouped. Programs will say, "Hey, we have enough online courses to make an online minor, and then an online major, and then an online certificate, and then an online degree." And at some point in that development, an administrator like me comes in and says, "Hey, we've got online programs. We've got to put some structure around these things. We've got to have policies and procedures, and we've got processes and all these things so that we can so that we can keep track of what's going on and all." And so that's how uh, programs mostly have developed at colleges and universities. It's been homegrown efforts going up, and there's nothing wrong with that. And online learning has been increasing since the beginning of the century. It's been the fastest growing sector of higher education throughout this whole new millennium, and was growing steady about 2.5% uh, each year, and up to the fact that a little over 1/3 of all colleges and college and university students were taking online courses. And then COVID happened. And the effects of COVID for online are things like accelerating and changing institutional mission and culture regarding online and digital learning. A lot of institutions that basically said, hey, you know what? Online distance learning, it's not part of our mission, it's not part of our culture, and all. Um, they started seeing one through COVID, since they were forced into it, and they saw that, you know, what we were doing under emergency remote teaching isn't necessarily the ideal. But we realize, hey, you know what? If we do this right, we can actually do this and have part of our mission revolving this, and and also it'll help us to reach some student populations that we haven't reached before, particularly working adult learners. So then they decided formalizing digital learning initiatives. We're actually going to start looking at this um, from a university standpoint. We're going to put some resources in place. We're going to put some student services in place and all that, because not everybody now is going to be coming to campus. So what are resources that they're going to need that right now our face-to-face students have? Then they do things like hiring chief online learning officers like myself, usually at the VP or AVP level, um, to help bring these initiatives to pass. And then finally, centralizing digital learning operations. Whereas before, it was always just kind of individual faculty and colleges and departments. Now we're seeing a lot more centers for teaching and learning that include online learning development, standalone offices of online education and all, or continuing ed that got into online that are now becoming more mainstream within the institution. And so I'm going to be talking about one particular area of this, and that is managing the development of online courses. Now, there are a whole bunch of other topics that we can be talking about, like centralizing student services and administrative services and online instruction and all very important. But this is going to focus on course development. And so why think of these in terms of institution rather than individual faculty just putting their courses online? One, it allows the university to scale the development of online courses. At my institution, we were like a lot. We were offering Quality Matters training to the faculty and how to put their courses online, and giving them resources and rubrics, and having them build a lesson and critique that. And again, nothing wrong with that. But as a result of that, we were finding that faculty were taking on an average of about 1.5 years to create an online course, which again, if it's your own course for you to teach, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you want to create and scale fully online programs and degrees, that model was not scalable. And so creating a process for doing this allows us to scale the development of online courses. Also, it better aligns individual courses to program level learning outcomes. At my institutions, all of my institutions that didn't do what we're talking about here, faculty would create their own courses, and 3 different faculty would create 3 different versions of the same course and do it in a vacuum, without any collaboration. And so, did they meet the program level learning outcomes? And because we didn't have that kind of alignment, we would have um, we'd have two common complaints from students. One is there are gaps in the program level outcomes. You know, here's the outcomes. This is what I'm supposed to learn, but they haven't mapped it to the individual courses. So there's gaps. There's things that the deans and chairs thought were being covered and were not. And the other thing is that students would say, there's redundancy in here. And we're going to talk about the master course philosophy because we follow that too. Um, the redundancy. Hey, I just took a different class and they taught me exactly the same thing. Well, of course they did, because you had two different faculty members who didn't coordinate, and they didn't, they weren't aligning all of this stuff. So yeah, there's a lot of redundancy. Also allows you to contain development costs. It eliminates redundancies, and it also creates a more consistent experience for your online learners. Now, I'm going to talk about a particular set of decisions that need to be made if you are going to do what we're going to talk about. Now, one of the things you'll find is I'm not going to say you have to do it this way. What I'm going to say is you have to decide whether it's going to be this way or this way, but you have to make that decision, because you can either solve the problems early by strategically planning for them, or you can solve the problems after they become problems. And so one size does not fit all. A small community college and a small private university and a large state university may have different ways of applying this according to your institutional makeup, resources, staffing, and culture. So what I'm going to give you is a decision-making framework on how to do online course development at the institution level. And they're going to be in four main components: environment, roles and responsibilities, standards and evaluations, and operations. And then each one of these has these bullet points, and we're going to go through those bullet points point by point. So first thing is environmental concerns. And the reason that I call them environment is that it really involves the entire operation and influences the entire operation. The decisions made here will influence all the rest of the decisions here. So this is the distance education development environment. Now, the first thing is this going to be internal or external development? By internal, I mean that the online program is going to be run within the institution by institutional people. So you have your own instructional design, you have your own online learning department, you have the instruction, you have the development, the student services, etc., and it's all done internal. Or is it going to be external? And by external, I mean, are you going to use an online program management firm or an OPM, like Pearson or Education Partners and all? The decision, now I'm not going to tell you you have to do one or the other. And I've done a lot of consulting with institutions that do one or the other. I have my own opinions and preferences as far as that goes. But what I can tell you is that decision influences everything else. And yes, OPMs definitely can be tricky. Because if you have an OPM, then very often your chief online learning officer, director of online ed, VP of online, or whatever that is called, then really becomes the we'll say the institution's rep to the OPM. So Bob, yes, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I can tell you, I've been involved in the debate at an institution about whether to go with an OPM or not. And uh, I, my experience is with OPMs, you don't realize any profit until far down the road.
That's correct.
Now, yes, they can bring resources immediately available to get the program up and running. Long term, though, if
but
you're
they
going to
need,
have them manage, develop multiple programs, their interests may be different from yours. They're going to want programs that have high, possibility of getting
yeah.
students as opposed to something niche that maybe it's important to your institution to do.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, the OPMs come with an upfront investment into your program, and they need to recoup that investment before, and it's usually on a profit sharing model, but not always. Now the OPMs have kind of gotten smart and went from we're going to run all of your operations to now a la carte services, which appears to work really better. But then then the chief online learning officer often becomes the account manager as opposed to the one making all of the making the big decisions. So then the other is your development going to be centralized or decentralized? This is the other big major decision. So are the personnel and resources that are going to be doing this, um, the course development, the instructional design, etc., are those centralized so that the entire campus has access to them, or are they siloed and you know the College of Education has its own distance learning department, as it were, and its own IDs and things like that, and then the College of Business has its own, and the College of Arts and Sciences has its own. So that, again, that's a decision. Now I definitely have some uh, some things to say about that. But what I am saying is the institution, its makeup, its culture, this is something you have to determine, because if you decide to centralize, that may be going against a lot of institutional culture that may be siloed. But that decision needs to be made, or else it really isn't institution-wide course development. It's still everybody doing their own thing. So that's why these two decisions are environmental decisions. Then the next, you have to determine roles and responsibilities. So first of all, faculty roles. And the faculty roles drive everything else as far as roles go. And there are three basic roles that a faculty member can take. One is autonomous role, whereas the faculty member, basically it's up to the faculty member. They're doing it all. They don't answer to anybody else. They're doing the whole thing. That's the traditional model. The second is a partnership model where the faculty member is teamed with somebody, is partnered with somebody, most often an instructional designer. And the two of them work together to build this. The third is a team-based model. And I see your hand, Tex, so I'll let you ask your question in a second. Team-based model, and that is where the faculty member is part of a design team and may serve as the subject matter expert for a design team. So you have autonomous, faculty does it all, partnership, where the faculty is the subject matter expert, SME, and then there's an instructional designer. And then the team-based model, where you may have a media designer and an editor and another technician and all that. And that's team-based is how they do it in the large, fully online institutions like Western Governors and Capella and Southern New Hampshire and all of that. Because in order to scale, you need to have a whole team. And then we'll go to the ID roles, and then I'll have you comment, Tex. Now, the instructional designer role is largely driven by the faculty role. In an autonomous model, the use of the instructional designer is completely optional. The faculty member says, yeah, the ID's there, I don't need them, I don't want them. or they can say yes. In a partnership model and in a team-based model, the instructional designer's role is mandatory. It is part of the course design. Now, the question then becomes, does the ID serve as a true academic partner, or is the ID playing some kind of subordinate role to the faculty member? And one of the most common complaints about that instructional designers have, other than the fact that people don't know what they do, is people assume that I am IT support help, or I'm like a TA, and my job is just to do whatever the faculty member says and upload it to the LMS without offering any suggestions, any things like that. And in that case, then they're not a partner. Or is the instructional design role completely non-existent because it's not there? So the faculty and the ID roles and responsibilities, again, this is a decision that needs to be made at my institutions. We have made the decision that for fully online programs, that it would be a partnership model, that the use of instructional designer is not optional, and that the instructional designer's role compared to the subject matter expert's role has been very well delineated. So it is a true partnership model. So Bob, your question.
Well, this is a
Oh, I'm sorry.
topic I'm really
sorry.
interested.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Bob. Tex actually raised
Oh,
his hand for you.
Go right ahead, Dex. Sorry.
That's okay. You could ask your question, Bob, and it's good to see you. So Anthony, I have two questions, and before I ask them, I'll say we're mostly a team-based, mandatory, centralized approach to design at our institution as well. But we do, unfortunately, have to set boundaries every so often where faculty look at us more as subordinates or almost, content custodians in the LMS, if you will, where we're just kind of getting things cleaned up and in place. And they're not really looking at us for any real pedagogical or design value. But my one question is, you mentioned in passing, I'm sorry I joined late, so I didn't hear your intro, but you mentioned in your passing that you do advising in terms of course design, and you do different things in that regard. So you do consultant work, I think was the term you used. So I'm curious, how many institutions that you've worked with are centralized in terms of percentages, and how many are decentralized? And my second question is, what about design maps? We utilize a design map, but we get pushback from our SMEs sometimes in that it's a pain in the neck to utilize a design map. I'm curious to know what your thoughts are on that and how many institutions use them.
I'm going to answer the design map a little later because it's part of the presentation. The other is how many do the centralized versus distributed? I'd say about, and the thing about this is there's a lot of variation between the two. But I'd say at this point, it's about 1/4 that have some kind of centralized thing, and about 3/4 that it's still the Wild West. And out of those 3/4, everyone that I talk to want to go to the other way.
Do you think, so I have a follow-up question. Do you think for-profits led the pack in that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Absolutely. That's not even controversial. For-profits led the way in online education altogether. They stepped in where nonprofit universities were not meeting the needs of those. And yes, as far as applying business models, because we don't, in higher ed, we're not that good at applying business models. we try to delude ourselves that we're not a business, and we are just a different kind of business. And so, so yeah, absolutely, for-profits did. So let me go on because oh Bob, yes.
I, I've seen a difference depending on the institution. It's been if you've got a really old institution, it's been around, that's a much bigger challenge getting faculty to do something different as opposed to, say, a community college,
Right,
you know? Um,
it's true. The R1 universities, the Research One universities, um, I'm gonna, people will be mad at me, but it's true. Some of the weakest online programs that there are at research universities, because what happens is every college is its own kingdom,
yeah,
and they don't often share. And so what happens is you have this idea of some colleges are haves and some colleges are have-nots. And of course, they don't talk about the have-nots that are really struggling, that don't have instructional designers, that have, you know, that don't have minimum standards and course evaluation and all of these other things. And so so another reason why
and
central versus
the other
not.
other thing that's important is ownership of the course.
Yes,
That's something that
that's
needs to be determined up front.
exactly. As a matter of fact, you have presupposed the next part of this presentation. So thank you for that.
Okay.
Thank you for leading us right in there, because along with roles and responsibilities is the scope of work. And that is what determines whether the online course development is complete. That depends a lot upon upon whether it's an autonomous model. My institution, we actually hire faculty members to serve as SMEs. So they're serving as subject matter experts over and above their regular teaching load. And so they actually have a contract that they sign. I'm paying them for this work. And there is the work specifications. What is it that we want from you versus what is it that we want from the instructional designer, et cetera. So what are the conditions? When these things have been met, the course is complete. And that may be a review of standards, or the instructional designer signs it off, a lot of different ways, but you need to have a way of doing this. And I'm happy to share what we do and the SME contracts that we have and all of that there. The other is compensation. You have the choice. Is this going to be part of a faculty member's normal job duties? Are there's going to be release time given to the faculty to do this, or do they get a stipend? And there are some nice things about each one of those. The challenge for normal job duties and release time is that I, as the person who is really in charge of the building of the online courses, the academic departments are my client. So I take their faculty and we create these courses for them. If it's part of their normal job duties and we have a subject matter expert who doesn't do the job, I don't have the authority to dock their pay. That's the same problem with release time. But with stipend, I'm paying the stipend. So you have to do it this way or else you don't get paid. And so that compensation needs to be determined. And also what happens if it is just part of the faculty's teaching load or whatever? What happens if they don't do it? What happens if something else happens? They get sick or whatever. What happens? And then the other thing, as Bob mentioned, very important, intellectual property. Who owns the course that this person is developing? Who owns the content within that course? And so one model is the faculty owns the course. It's their intellectual property. The other is a work for hire kind of a situation where the faculty is paid to provide content for the course, and the university pays them for that content. And then the other is a shared ownership model. And that can either be faculty and the university share the ownership, or it could be a model where the faculty owns the course, but then gives the university full rights to be able to offer that course and to modify it, etc. Or the other way around. The university offers the course and gives the faculty member the ability to use that content to in other instances and teaching there. Anne, yes, your question.
Hey, Anthony, thank you for your comments so far. I was wondering, so we have a similar model here at Yavapai College. But I was wondering, you mentioned that you can use stipends to really get a SME to to comply with your suggestions.
Yeah, so it's a work for hire contract.
Sure. And
to do this.
how do you see that as affecting your relationship with the SMEs? Because I think we try to be collaborators, and to have that type of a partnership where you really are consulting and guiding them and walking along with them. Have you seen how in your experience has that affected the relationship with the SMEs when you're approaching it that way?
Sure, that's a wonderful question. In a couple of ways. One, the way that we approach, and we're doing this on an academic department level. We're not approaching individual faculty about putting their courses online. This is what happens when a department says, we want to offer an online master's in public health. And so then we meet with this, we meet with the faculty, with the SMEs and all, and explain how this works. And part of it is the way that we approach the SMEs is, you are busy people. You have to do teaching, research, service, and all. And by having to do everything yourself, you also have to become expert on digital accessibility and what are the latest WCAG standards. You have to be expert on how to format instruction and properly chunk it for online delivery. And you have to be an expert on all of the back-end tools and availability and affordances and features of the learning management system and all. And so part of the way we approach it is, we're taking all of that burden off of your shoulders. What we want from you is raw content. You don't have to format it. You don't have to do, you just give us the content in Word form or whatever, links to videos, however you want. And then we will build the content, our IDs will build the content in the LMS to your specifications and all of this. And then you get to go in and say, hey, change this around and all that, but you don't have to do the work. The other thing is that we put a clause in the work for hire content, and I alluded to it before, is even though the university owns the course, and we had that in the university's intellectual property before I even got there. Great blessing for me. It's already there that it says, if the university pays you for content, to develop content for an online course, the university owns that course. What I had put in is you have an unlimited use license to use that content for academic purposes. And when they say, well, what does that mean? If you're teaching as an adjunct for another university, you can use content you develop for this course, and the university is not going to go after you. If you want to do research, writing, anything based on that content, we're not going to give you any restrictions. What the university wants is to be able to determine who is going to teach that course, and if this course is going to be updated, the university can choose another SME for that. But the original SME still has access to all the stuff that they did. The university is not going to go after them. And so by doing that, plus the other side of it is for the one who's going to be teaching, are you going to make me teach a canned course developed by somebody else? Well, no. What we're going to give you is a ready-to-teach course with all the content. A ready-to-teach master. We call it template courses because we're trying to get away from the term master. But we're going to give you a template course that is full of content that you can teach, and you have full editor access to your course. So you, in your academic freedom and your professional judgment, decide what of that course you are going to use. Now, your chair is going to say, don't change the learning outcomes, because we report those to the accrediting body. But as far as the instruction goes, you have complete access. And between those two things, we have really avoided the whole academic freedom, intellectual property issue. So another thing that you have to determine is, what are the standards and evaluation of these courses? How are you going to tell if they're any good? Because that's one of the problems. When we leave it up to the faculty, having the faculty go through the Quality Matters process of course evaluation was completely optional. And so a very small percentage actually chose to take that because it took a long time. And what we're doing is building these template courses that many faculty can teach. And so what are the standards? What are the minimum standards for online course quality where we can say, yes, this is ready to teach? And the other is, what is the process for evaluating and approving these online courses? So good news, minimum standards, there's a ton of things available. Quality Matters is the most widely known, but Online Learning Consortium, their quality scorecards, the OSCAR scorecard and all that, Blackboard Exemplary Course, AECT's standards for online course development, Cal State University's Quality Learning and Teaching, and here in Illinois, we had the Quality Online something or other, the QOCI. We use all of them. We took our standards by combining all of these things, and you're probably not surprised that they're mostly identical. Most of the items are identical. So what are the minimum standards that you're going to use to determine an online course that we develop must meet these standards? And then, of course, there's federal standards too. And then how are you going to assess that? The Quality Matters way is by faculty and peer groups of doing that, or evaluation committees, or autonomous. Some are just doing under an autonomous thing. There's no required. The way that we do it is, since we're creating these templated courses with an instructional designer, we actually have 3 levels of evaluation that's built into the course development process. The first is of course the SME, because the faculty member has access to the course and can provide input as far as those things. The second is, when we get to a point where it's pretty much ready, then a different instructional designer of my team does a thorough ID review with a large checklist. That's the most intense. And then changes are made based on that. And then finally, it's the academic department. They get put in the course, and the academic leader or that person's designee has basically a one-pager to determine whether the course meets discipline needs, their accreditation needs, etc. And so it goes through 3 sets of eyes. And then the academic department is the one that says, yes, this is, they do the final approval. Yes, it's approved, or you have to change these particular things. So it goes through 3 sets of eyes by doing this. So finally, we're getting kind of down to the wire. So so let me quickly go through these last slides, and then I'll just open it up for questions. In operations, other types of decisions that have to be made is, you know, are you going to have different types of development? When you're first implementing this, everything is a new course development. But as you get to the point where you've developed a course and then it you know, it needs updating, etc. Redevelopment. What is the way that a course gets prompted for redevelopment, and what is the process for that? What's the pay scale for that? What about just a partial course redevelopment? We had a change in some of these laws, so these particular modules have to be updated. And what about blended or hybrid courses that may not have all of the components online? Some of them are going to be face-to-face. Is that a differential as far as how the course is developed and how things are paid? And then course and curriculum mapping. Here's where we get to the course design thing. A course map is basically a blueprint of the course development. That's the first thing that we have SMEs do. And the course map is basically a way to do 2 things. One is to tie the course's learning objectives to the program learning objectives, and to tie the module, weekly, lesson objectives to the course objectives, so that everything aligns. Accrediting agencies love that sort of stuff. And it also makes it better. And then really what it is this week, these are the learning outcomes. These are how we are assessing the outcomes. And then these are instructions and things to have that happen. And so basically it's just a blueprint of the course that not only makes the course design happen faster, but also when it comes time to redevelop the course, you already have a blueprint for what's in the course. And you can take the course map and say, these are the things that need to be changed. And then you can do the course development. Plus, if you happen to be in, when they're looking at accrediting bodies, and particularly if you have programmatic accrediting agencies, they love this, because then you can do things like show, yes, this is the same outcomes between face-to-face and online courses. And this is how we do it. In fact, at my previous institution, we used a single course map for both the face-to-face and the online version of the courses. And what we did is we varied the assessment part there, but it tends to work. And so it ties the on-ground course and the online courses, facilitates curriculum review, facilitates accreditation. Then the idea is guided versus independent design. And that's where we get into the master course. Independent faculty just develop the course and the structure and however they want. Template basically means that, that there is either a course template and structure that's made for all of the courses, or faculty may have a choice of different templates. Now we use Canvas. Canvas really imposes a structure more than a lot of others do, because it imposes the structure of modules. Whereas others, you could kind of, we had Sakai before that, and with Sakai, you could pretty much do whatever you want. And then the difference between a master course and a template is that a master course is a template that also has content in it. Usually what happens if you have multiple templates, the faculty get a template, but there's no content in the course. Master course is a course that uses a template plus uses a SME to develop all of the course materials. And so the course is ready to teach, which is really nice when you're hiring adjunct faculty, when you have brand new faculty, and when you have, like we do, some courses being taught by doctoral students, by graduate assistants. Let's see. And then finally, accessibility. And that's become mandatory now. New Title II regulations, our courses have to be WCAG 2.1 AA, depending on the type of institution, either by 2026 or 2027. So how are you going to instigate and have that as part of your online course thing? And of course, universal design for learning. If you do that, that not only provides that for the structure and accommodations, but also for the instruction too. And not only is it now federal requirement, but advocacy groups have successfully sued Harvard, Yale, MIT, Johns Hopkins to have this done, and they'll beat us. If they sue us, they'll win. So these are some things to consider, decisions that need to be made if you want to do this. So let's see, we're right about at time. So let me see. One of the early ones to get this at our about the MOOC rush. I guess we've kind of remained that way when it comes to our own course development. Yep, university instruction-wide resources have grown over the years. Bless you. That's what we're doing too. The institutions where faculty, I talk to the instructional designers, the online learning staff, the people who do this. They all want to do it. They all want to do it this way with master courses and all that. They see the advantages. They realize that at some of their institutions, it's a huge cultural wall to climb. But to do so really makes situations best for the students and ultimately, frankly, even for the faculty. So
if I can jump in, I want to add to that, talk about faculty who have gone through this development process. Most of them have said to me, I've taught this course for 10, 12 years. I was kind of on cruise control with it.
yeah.
This process gave me a chance to rethink it, come up with some new ideas, and they really, really, benefited from that development process, and it impacted their face-to-face courses as well.
Yeah, and it's so true. It's so true. I have had hundreds of my peers come back to me saying this online thing that I've learned, starting with what should they know and be able to do at the end of the course and then work through it this way. Did you know that works for my face-to-face courses too? And I said, yes, it does. Yes, it does. And the other follow-up question to, what about faculty who are hesitant about this kind of process? What I can say is the faculty members who have gone through this process of being a SME and seeing how much really nicer it is than when they had to do it all themselves, they come back for more. So thank you so much for this particular time. Please feel free to send me an email if you have questions, if you have concerns. I'm happy to serve as a sounding board or to give advice. You're all now my colleagues. So please feel free to reach out to me if there's anything that I can do to help.
Well, thank you. I have a feeling we could have gone on for another hour because there are so many elements. You know, it's almost like the course development process is just one piece. There's all that stuff behind that you've got to get in, you know, like policies and so forth. You got to get in place.
It is, it's
But
so,
we don't have another hour to go.
it's so true. It is so true. And again, for anyone who wants any of those behind the scenes types of things, just reach out.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. And in the top of the hour, we've got another session. Hope to see you all there.